Hey everyone, this is Bob Kovacs here with another Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. This time we are pitting two of HTC's most popular phones and some of HTC's most powerful phones against each other. On the left is the HTC ThunderBolt, which runs on Verizon. In fact, it was the first 4G phone to run on Verizon's LTE network. On the right is the brand new HTC EVO 3D. This runs on Sprint's WiMAX 4G network. So we've got Verizon versus Sprint. We've got ThunderBolt versus EVO 3D. Now, both of these phones, as you can see, they are HTC phones, so they are running HTC's Sense user interface. This is HTC's famous clock widget there. And the Sense, the version of Sense that's on the ThunderBolt is 2.0. The version of Sense that's on the EVO 3D is 3.0, and there's many interesting improvements in 3.0. Notice that there's kind of a 3D look as you go from page to page to page. And with Sense 3.0, you can just keep going around and around and come back to the main page. It doesn't matter which direction you go in. And if you want to have a little fun, you can just kind of whip through that carousel sort of look, and it spins around and comes back to the page you started on. So that is Sense 3.0. This is Sense 2.0. It doesn't have that feature. It doesn't have the 3D look. And when you get to the end, it just sits there and says, hey, buddy, you got to go back the way you came. So it's not as slick as the Sense 3.0 that you have on the EVO 3D. So it's kind of a minor thing. I know that there's some other features of Sense 3.0 that I'm not showing you. It actually has a lot of features. So some of you may consider it to be a major thing. However, you know, I give the user interface round to the EVO 3D because it has Sense 3.0. Now, a couple of other things. As of this moment, the ThunderBolt ships with Android 2.2. The EVO 3D has Android 2.3, so the EVO 3D has got a newer version of Android. There's a lot of specifications for these two phones. I'm going to go into them very quickly. First of all, I'm going to talk about the displays. Both of these are 4.3-inch diagonal LCD displays, but they are slightly different shaped displays. If you look at the two of them together, you'll see that the EVO 3D is a little taller and a little narrower, whereas the ThunderBolt is a little shorter and a little wider. That's because the EVO 3D has a 16:9 aspect ratio. That's the same aspect ratio as your home TV, because this shows 1/4 of a HD TV screen, and I'll come back to that in just a moment. Meanwhile, the ThunderBolt doesn't have that 16:9 restriction, so it used a LCD display that was available and popular at the time the phone was built. By the way, if you look really carefully, somehow I got a crack in the glass, the Gorilla Glass here on my ThunderBolt. Now, I usually keep these phones in my drawer locked up, but they do get passed around the office a lot, and I did not notice that crack until earlier today. So I apologize for that, my Wirefly fans, because I normally take very, very good care and keep very close control over these phones, but the Gorilla Glass obviously got in the way of a rhinoceros or something to get cracked like that. Anyway, back to the displays. Now, the HTC EVO 3D has a display resolution of 540 by 960 pixels. Here on the ThunderBolt, you have 480 by 800 pixels. So, no question about it. The the EVO 3D wins the resolution round. And I mentioned that this was 1/4 of HD resolution. That's because full HD resolution is 1080 by 1920. So this is 1/4 of that. This is 540 by 960. So I'm going to run through a bunch of other specifications, and then I am going to do one benchmark test with these two phones, and we'll see who the winner is. But the ThunderBolt has got a 1 gigahertz processor. It's a single core processor, 768 megabytes of RAM. It has 8 gigs of onboard memory and comes with, right out of the box, it comes with a 32 gigabyte micro SD card. This phone packs 40 gigabytes of storage as it comes out of the box. That is a very impressive amount of storage. On the other hand, the EVO 3D is nowhere near close to that. It has 4 gigs internal storage and 8 gigs of a micro SD card for a total of 12 gigs out of the box. Of course, you can upgrade the micro SD card with a 32 gig, but you'd have to go out and buy it, whereas the Thunderbolt comes with that. So the Thunderbolt has a very powerful punch in that round of the cell phone Schmackdown with respect to the storage on the phone. Then we have a 1400 milliamp hour battery here in the Thunderbolt and a 1730 milliamp hour battery here in the EVO 3D. So that means that the EVO 3D has almost 25% more power capacity than the Thunderbolt does. So the battery round goes to the EVO 3D. Thunderbolt has a very sturdy kickstand that can hold the phone either horizontally or vertically, and it's stable here to hold it vertically. So the EVO 3D has no such kickstand. So the EVO 3D has a very poor showing in the kickstand round. Now the EVO 3D, as you saw from that, does have a dual camera 3D visual system that allows you to take 3D photographs and 3D HD video in 720p. The Thunderbolt has a single lens, so it's a 2D camera. It takes 720p video as well, but it takes still images up to 8 megapixel. You've got up to 5 megapixel here in the EVO 3D, 8 megapixel here at the Thunderbolt. So from a still image standpoint, I'm going to go ahead and give this round to the Thunderbolt. However, from a 3D standpoint, and I know there's probably a lot of you out there screaming, 3D's a gimmick. I can tell you it may be a gimmick, but it's a lot of fun. The people who have already bought the EVO 3D are also saying that, hey, this is kind of a fun thing to have. So 3D goes to the EVO 3D. However, the still image 2D picture quality goes to the Thunderbolt. Okay, a couple of other things. I mentioned the 1 gigahertz processor we have over here, 768 megabytes of RAM. Over here on the EVO 3D, we have a 1.2 gigahertz dual core processor. So it's like 2 processors running at 1.2 gigahertz, and it has 1 gigabyte of processor RAM here in the EVO 3D. So we've got some really kicking specs on the EVO 3D versus the Thunderbolt. So the EVO 3D takes that processor round. There's a lot of other things I can talk about. I'm trying to keep this Schmackdown as short as I reasonably can, but I want to go ahead and run Smart Bench on both of these phones, and we'll go ahead and see what the 2 phones run like with Smart Bench. Smart Bench, of course, is a benchmark application that you can download for free from the Android market. And the more powerful the phone is, the faster Smart Bench will run. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to run Smart Bench, and I'm going to turn off my studio lights so you can better see how Smart Bench runs. Here we go. Okay. The EVO 3D blasted through that initial mathematic calculation. It handled the fractals. Now the Thunderbolt has switched over to the fractals. Man, this looks really cool. Look at how the EVO 3D is blasting through the corridor test there. It's completely done with that. The faster the processor, the faster it goes through that corridor test. You see the corridor test is moving at a rather stately pace over here on the Thunderbolt. This is the last of the visual tests running on the EVO 3D. That's called the jellyfish test. And the Thunderbolt is yet to get caught up to the EVO 3D with the Thunderbolt test. I'm going to go ahead and display the index scores. Man, this is weird working in a black studio. I hope you guys can see this really well, because I think it looks pretty darn cool. Okay, the Thunderbolt has made it to the jellyfish test. It's funny because I can see that screen much better with my naked eye than I can when I look at it on the monitor. But here we go. We're getting ready to call up the indexes, the scores. And as you guys recall, the Smart Bench application has 2 scores that it comes up with. One that's called the productivity score and the other that's called the game score. Over here on the EVO 3D, we have 2,626 on productivity. That's 2626. and we have 1,631 on games. That's 1631. So we've got 2626 and 1631. We're still waiting for the Thunderbolt to find its scores. And here we go. The Thunderbolt got a productivity score of 940 and a game score of 1,271. That's 1271. So the game score is about 75% of what the EVO 3D score is, and the productivity score is nearly 1/3. The EVO 3D is about 3 times as high as the productivity score you have here on the Thunderbolt. So, as you can see, the EVO 3D has got a lot more power inside. Let me also mention that SmartBench is actually, as far as I understand it, SmartBench is actually running on only one of the 2 cores that's in the EVO 3D. The other core is kept aside to run other things on the phone. It's handling other applications that are running or other operations that occur in the background, such as operations that are associated with the radios. One other thing, the EVO 3D I have connected to Sprint's 3G network at the moment. You see the 3G there. The Thunderbolt I have connected to the internal Wi-Fi here at Wirefly. This phone is not activated. However, none of that testing has anything to do with the network connection. The testing does not use the network connection in order to develop any of those numbers. So the numbers that you saw had nothing to do with the fact that this is on Sprint's 3G network and this is on the local Wi-Fi. So that is a Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown between the Thunderbolt and the EVO 3D. This one goes to the EVO 3D, clearly a more powerful phone. Now the Thunderbolt has some excellent features, and it is a fast single-core phone. And by the way, I didn't really talk about the networks, so let me get a word in edgewise about the networks. I have found, my personal experience is that Verizon's LTE absolutely kicks butt with download speed, and for that matter, upload speed on their LTE network. Now, Sprint was the first out of the box with its WiMAX 4G network, but in my experience, I don't get anywhere near the 4G speeds on WiMAX that I get on LTE. I've gotten speeds on this very phone as high as 19 megabits per second, and I routinely get speeds on the Thunderbolt that are 12 or 13 megabits. I've never gotten higher than about 6.5 megabits on Sprint's WiMAX network, and the highest I've gotten on this phone is 6 megabits. So that is the Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. The Thunderbolt has got some good points going for it, but the overall power goes to the EVO 3D, which wins this Wirefly cell phone Schmackdown. Hey, this is Bob Kovacs here at Wirefly. Thanks for watching.